Now coming to another important problem which you can face while weaning the child from cardiopulmonary bypass, that is pulmonary hypertensive crisis. Here there is a crisis with pulmonary hypertension. There is acute increase in pulmonary vascular resistance which increases the right ventricular afterload, and right ventricular dysfunction will happen, and there will be significant hemodynamic decompensation. And the perioperative precipitating factor for this pulmonary hypertensive crisis is the triad of hypoxia, hypercarbia and acidosis, hypothermia, pain and lighter planes of anesthesia. Another important thing for pulmonary hypertensive crisis is the airway manipulation in patient with pulmonary hypertension under lighter planes of anesthesia. This is very important because in an endotracheal tube, in lighter planes, when you put a suction in the endotracheal tube and try to remove the secretion in lighter plane, it might trigger a pulmonary hypertensive crisis, particularly when the pulmonary blood flow is very high in the preoperative period. This crisis can happen during hemodynamic catheterization or during drug studies, can happen in non-cardiac as well as cardiac surgical procedures. Certain common principles remain in the treatment of pulmonary hypertensive crisis. Let us look at different scenario which happens with pulmonary hypertension. There is no atrial shunt. The atrial septum is normal, and normally the coupling between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery is maintained. In this case, there is going to be pulmonary hypertension, there is going to be increased central venous pressure, and your right ventricular end diastolic pressure is increased. When this two happens, there is going to be slow hypoxia and slow hypotension. This is the first subset where your septum is normal, where your coupling is between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery is maintained. In the second scenario, there is no atrial shunt. The atrial septum is normal, but the coupling between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery is not maintained, which means that there is no pulmonary blood flow. Here, the right ventricular end diastolic volume goes up and it pushes the septum towards the left side, where your left ventricular end diastolic volume also comes down. Your systemic flow and your pulmonary blood flow comes down, and it can lead to slow hypoxia but fast hypotension. Your left ventricle is also compromised. So the hypotension is going to be fast, but the hypoxemia is going to be slow. Now coming to the third scenario, where there is a atrial septal defect and right side pressure is going to be more, so the blood from the right side goes into the left side. Because there is pulmonary artery hypertension, right side is more, and ventricular vascular coupling is maintained between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. Now there is a atrial defect, but the ventricular vascular coupling is maintained. Here you have a increased right ventricular end diastolic pressure and decreased PaO2. Your coupling is not maintained. The forward flow from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery is not there. As a result, you have decreased arterial oxygen tension. Here the hypoxemia is going to be fast, but the hypotension can be slightly at a lower state. Now coming to the fourth possible scenario, where there is a atrial shunt. The blood from the right side goes into the left side, and your ventricular vascular coupling is also not maintained. The blood from the right ventricle cannot go into PA. Now it is going to be a dangerous situation. There is a septal defect as well as the coupling between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery is not maintained. Here there is going to be increased right ventricular end diastolic volume, decreased left ventricular end diastolic volume, because the septum is moved and your forward flow is reduced. There is decreased systemic output, your PaO2 comes down, your pulmonary blood flow is coming down, and there is going to be fast hypoxemia and fast hypotension. So these are the various possible scenarios you can face with pulmonary hypertension, depending upon the septum being intact and the coupling between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. Depending upon this, you can develop hypoxemia and hypotension.